Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen stood at perfect parade rest in Earth's newly constructed space embassy, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display floating in the center of the conference room. The footage showed her SEAL team executing a covert underwater infiltration exercise, their movements precise and deliberate in the murky depths. She'd completed that same training course dozens of times, but today it was being scrutinized by very different eyes. Supreme Commander Zax Thor of the Xendari Elite Forces towered over the human delegation, his crystalline armor catching the light with every movement of his broad shoulders. The iridescent scales along his neck rippled with what Chen had learned to recognize as amusement, not the friendly kind. "This is your elite training." Zax Thor's translator rendered his words into perfect English, though it couldn't quite mask the condescension in his tone. Swimming through water like primitive aquatic creatures. The other members of the Xendari delegation exchanged knowing looks. They're neural-enhanced warriors trained in zero-gravity combat simulators and practiced with weapons that could reduce mountains to ash. To them, the sight of humans swimming through water must have seemed absurdly antiquated. Chen maintained her composure, though her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She'd spent 15 years in the SEALs, had led teams through operations that would never appear in any official record, and had buried friends who'd given everything for missions the public would never know about. But here she stood, watching aliens laugh at the training that had forged some of Earth's finest warriors. "Tell me, Lieutenant Commander," Zax Thor continued, gesturing at the hologram with one armored hand, "how do you expect such methods to be effective in modern combat? Our warriors can teleport through solid matter. They can bend energy fields with their minds. What possible advantage could underwater stealth training offer?" Before Chen could respond, Admiral Harrison stepped forward. The weathered old naval officer had been specifically chosen to lead these military exchange discussions, but even his diplomatic skills were being tested. "Supreme Commander, perhaps a demonstration would be a waste of time," Zax Thor interrupted smoothly. "We appreciate Earth's military traditions, primitive though they may be. But surely you understand that in joining the greater galactic community, your forces will need to evolve." Chen watched as the hologram shifted to show another training sequence. Her team was practicing close-quarters combat, moving through darkened corridors with nothing but simple weapons and years of training. No neural enhancers, no energy shields, just human skill, determination, and the accumulated wisdom of centuries of special operations doctrine. "Your warriors are braves, certainly," Zax Thor conceded, though his tone suggested this was hardly a virtue. "But bravery alone means little against superior technology and enhanced capabilities. Perhaps we could arrange for some of your special forces to observe our training methods. It might help you understand the gap in our respective capabilities." Something sparked in Chen's eyes then, not anger, but a quiet certainty. She'd seen that same dismissive attitude before, from people who thought technology and fancy gear could replace the fundamentals of warfare. They all learned eventually. Some lessons had to be taught the hard way. "We would welcome any opportunity for joint training exercises, Supreme Commander," she said, her voice steady and professional. "There's always value in learning from different combat philosophies." Zax Thor's scales rippled again, this time with what might have been surprise at her diplomatic response. He inclined his head slightly. "How gracious of you to acknowledge your forces need to learn from us." Chen allowed herself the smallest of smiles. "Indeed, Supreme Commander. Knowledge flows both ways in true exchanges. I look forward to discovering what each of our forces might learn from the other." The implied challenge in her words was subtle, but it was there. Zax Thor's eyes narrowed slightly, suggesting he'd caught it. Good. Sometimes the best lessons started with a little wounded pride. The twin suns of New Montana cast strange shadows across the colony's agricultural domes. Lieutenant Commander Chen watched the larger orange sun dip toward the horizon, while its smaller blue companion hung stubbornly overhead, creating an eternal twilight that she still hadn't gotten used to. In the distance, 3 Xendari warships patrolled the system's outer reaches, their crystalline hulls glinting like artificial stars. "Motion tracking is online, Ma'am," Petty Officer Miguel Santos reported quietly, his fingers dancing across the sensor pad he carefully concealed within a maintenance panel. "We've got full coverage of the northern quadrant now." Chen nodded, making a small mark on her tactical display. Her team had spent the last week methodically placing their specialized sensors throughout the colony, disguising them as routine maintenance upgrades. The Xendari hadn't even bothered to ask what they were doing. After all, what threat could primitive human technology pose? "How's our underwater grid?" she asked, turning to Chief Kate Morrison, who was examining readouts from the colony's massive hydroponics reservoirs. "Clear as crystal, Commander. If anything bigger than a fish moves through those tanks, we'll know about it." Morrison's expression turned thoughtful. "Those signal patterns you noticed, they're getting stronger. Definitely coordinated, definitely artificial." Chen had first spotted the anomalies 3 days ago. Brief, encrypted bursts of communication that didn't match any known colonial frequencies. The Xendari's advanced quantum detection systems hadn't flagged them as suspicious, but Chen recognized the pattern. It was old-school frequency hopping, the kind of basic technology that more advanced civilizations often overlooked. Commander Zaxthor dismissed our concerns again, Lieutenant James Cooper reported, joining them at the observation point. "Said their neural-enhanced warriors can handle any threat to the colony." He paused, then added with a slight smile. He suggested we focus on learning to use their training simulators instead of playing with primitive sensing devices. Chen watched another Xendari patrol sweep past, their powered armor humming with energy fields. The aliens were impressive, no doubt about it. But they'd forgotten something crucial about warfare. Sometimes the old ways worked best because everyone else had forgotten them. "Status on the emergency protocols?" she asked, turning back to her team. "All colonists have been quietly briefed," Cooper confirmed. "They know the rally points and the signals to watch for. Dr. Rahman has the medical bay prepped, though she had to hide most of her supplies so that Xendari wouldn't ask questions about why we're stockpiling." Chen nodded, satisfied. Her team had been preparing for nearly 2 weeks, ever since they'd first detected those suspicious signals. The Star Reavers were coming. She was certain of it. Their raid on the Proxima colony last month had followed the same pattern of encrypted communications. "What's our water supply looking like, Chief?" Morrison grinned. "Tanks are full, ma'am. We've got multiple entry points mapped and tested. They'll never see us coming. Or going," Santos added with a quiet chuckle. "Those maintenance shafts we've been repairing give us access to every major section of the colony." Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Xendari's dismissal of human capabilities had worked in their favor. No one had questioned why Earth's elite naval special warfare operators would want to inspect the colony's water systems. It simply hadn't occurred to them that primitive humans might be laying the groundwork for a sophisticated counter-assault strategy. An alert flashed on Chen's tactical display. Another encrypted burst transmission, stronger this time. She studied the pattern for a moment, then made her decision. "Time to go dark," she ordered. "I want our teams in position within the hour. The Star Reavers are coming, and they're bringing friends." She cast one last look at the Xendari warships patrolling uselessly in the distance. "Let's show them why you should never underestimate primitive human ingenuity." The Star Reavers struck during third shift, when the colony's artificial day cycle was at its darkest. Their quantum-phase ships materialized inside the Xendari defense grid like ghosts stepping through a wall. Chen watched their approach through her tactical display, counting 6 sleek vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Right on schedule," she murmured from her position in the hydroponics bay. Her team was submerged in the nutrient-rich water, their rebreathers allowing them to stay hidden indefinitely. Through the crystalline walls of the tank, she could see the Xendari warriors rushing to their battle stations, their armor blazing with combat energy. Multiple breaching points detected, Santos reported through their secure comm channel. They're using sonic cutters on the outer hull. Looks like they've done their homework. They're avoiding all the major sensor zones. Too bad they didn't check the water, Morrison added with a quiet chuckle. Reading 12 hostiles entering through Section 7. Another 8 through engineering. Chen watched as the first group of raiders entered the colony proper. Their armor was dark and angular, designed for intimidation as much as protection. Energy weapons hummed to life as they secured their entry points with practiced efficiency. These weren't amateur pirates. They were professional military, probably mercenaries hired for their expertise. The incendiary response was immediate and spectacular. Commander Zaxthor led his warriors in a frontal assault, their crystalline armor flaring with power as they engaged the raiders in the main corridor. Energy weapons crossed in brilliant displays of light, and the sound of battle echoed through the colony's superstructure. They're not even looking for the real target, Cooper observed from his position near the secondary water treatment facility. The command center is wide open. Chen nodded, though her team couldn't see it underwater. That's what happens when you rely too much on flashy technology. You forget to check the basics. She switched to her full team channel. Execute Phase 2. Maintain stealth protocols. Her teams moved through the water with practiced grace, years of training evident in every motion. They emerged from hidden access points throughout the colony, their dark infiltration suits still dripping as they took up their positions. The raiders never noticed them. They were too focused on the dramatic battle with the Xendari. Command Center breach in progress, Santos reported. Reading 5 hostiles, heavily armed. They're using some kind of quantum encryption device. That's what they came for, Chen confirmed. They're trying to slice into the colony's navigational database, probably looking for the locations of other human settlements. She checked her tactical display one last time. Teams 2 and 3 maintain overwatch on the Xendari engagement. Team 1, with me. Chen led her squad through the maintenance tunnels that ran parallel to the command center. The raiders had disabled the main security systems, but they hadn't bothered checking for the simple motion sensors that Chen's team had installed days ago. Their arrogance would cost them dearly. Through gaps in the wall panels, Chen could see the raiders working at the central console. Their leader, distinguished by elaborate markings on his armor, was connecting the quantum encryption device to the colony's mainframe. We're going to show them an old Earth magic trick, Chen whispered to her team. Now you see them. She raised her hand, preparing to give the signal. In the distance, the battle between the Xendari and the other raiders continued to rage, full of sound and fury. But here, in the shadows of the command center, Chen's team readied themselves in complete silence. Their ceramic blades wouldn't trigger shield systems. Their specialized ammunition would bypass energy barriers. And their training, their primitive human training, had prepared them for exactly this kind of close-quarters combat. The raider leader began the final sequence to unlock the database. Chen's hand dropped, and her team moved like shadows coming to life. It was time to remind the galaxy that humanity's elite warriors didn't need advanced technology to be lethal. Lieutenant Commander Chen moved like water in the dimmed lights of the command center. Her ceramic blade slipped through the energy shield of the nearest raider, as if it wasn't there, finding a weak point in the armor beneath. The raider collapsed without a sound, their quantum encryption device clattering silently against the deck's padded surface. 4 targets remaining, she subvocalized into her comm unit. Her team was already in motion. Shadows among shadows. Chief Morrison emerged from behind a data terminal, her specialized sidearm releasing 2 rounds of old-style tungsten ammunition. The projectiles, designed specifically to penetrate energy shields, found their marks. 2 more raiders dropped before they could raise an alarm. The raider leader spun around, his enhanced sensors finally registering the threat. But by then, Santos had already disabled their communications with a localized electromagnetic pulse, another primitive technology that the raiders' advanced defenses hadn't been designed to stop. What is this? The leader demanded, his translator making the words sound harsh and metallic. He raised his energy rifle, the weapon humming as it charged. "How did you?" Cooper's tackle took him from behind, a perfect execution of close-quarters combat techniques that dated back to Earth's earliest special forces. The leader's energy rifle discharged harmlessly into the ceiling as both went down. The last raider tried to activate some kind of teleportation device, but Chen was already there, her blade finding another weak point in the supposedly impenetrable armor. "Command center secured," she reported calmly, watching as her team efficiently restrained the surviving raiders. "How's our distraction holding up?" Through her tactical display, she could see the continuing battle between the Xendari warriors and the main raider force. Commander Zaxthor's troops were putting on an impressive display of advanced combat techniques, their energy weapons and neural-enhanced abilities lighting up the corridor. But they were fighting exactly the way the raiders had expected them to fight. "They're still completely focused on the frontal assault," Morrison confirmed, securing the quantum encryption device. "Typical energy weapon light show. All flash, no subtlety." Chen nodded, accessing the command center systems. "Santos, get me a reading on their ships. Are they still maintaining their quantum phase state?" "Negative, Commander. They had to solidify to deploy their troops." "Want me to send the coordinates to our friends outside?" A small smile crossed Chen's face. "Do it. Let's see how they like some old-fashioned Earth hospitality." High above the colony, 3 Earth ships dropped their own stealth fields, vessels that the raiders' quantum sensors hadn't detected because they weren't using any exotic technology to hide. Just good old-fashioned thermal masking and emission control, techniques developed centuries ago for submarine warfare. The raiders' ships never saw the kinetic impact weapons coming. No energy shields could stop simple tungsten rods moving at relativistic speeds. 3 ships were disabled before they could re-engage their quantum drives. "Multiple hostiles breaking off their attack," Cooper reported, monitoring the tactical display. "They're falling back to their secondary extraction points." He paused, then added with satisfaction, "Right into teams 2 and 3. Chen watched through the colony's security feeds as her other teams emerged from their hidden positions. The raiders, caught between the Xendari's frontal assault and the SEAL's precise strikes, found themselves in a tactical nightmare. Their advanced technology meant nothing against opponents they couldn't detect, using weapons their defenses couldn't stop. "Commander," Santos called out, "I'm picking up a transmission from the Xendari command ship. Commander Zaxthor is requesting a status update." Chen looked down at the captured raider leader, who was staring at her with a mixture of disbelief and dawning comprehension. Here was someone who had finally learned what her team had known all along. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways, precisely because everyone else had forgotten about them. "Tell Commander Zaxthor that the Raiders' command structure has been neutralized," she replied, "and inform him that Earth's primitive special forces would be happy to provide a full briefing on how we did it." The Star Reaver's command structure unraveled like a loosely woven thread. Chen monitored the tactical display from the command center as confusion spread through the Raider ranks. Their carefully planned assault had transformed into chaos within minutes of losing contact with their leader. "Second wave falling back from Section 5, Morrison reported, her fingers dancing across the sensor controls. "They're trying to regroup near their secondary extraction point, but Team 3 has already disabled their transport beacons." Through the colony's surveillance system, Shen watched as another group of raiders discovered their quantum communications were being blocked by the SEAL's simple electromagnetic interference. It was almost poetic. Their advanced technology rendered useless by basic principles of physics that humanity had understood for centuries. "Status on the ship disablements?" Chen asked, turning to Santos. "All 3 primary vessels are dead in space, Commander. Those kinetic strikes severed their main power conduits." He grinned. "Turns out even quantum-phased ships don't like tungsten rods moving at relativistic speeds. The backup vessels are trying to maintain formation, but they're getting nervous." Cooper's voice came through the comm channel. "Commander, you're going to want to see this." Pulling it up on Monitor 3. Chen turned to watch as a group of raiders attempted to force their way through a secured airlock. Their energy weapons flared impressively, but couldn't breach the simple mechanical backup locks that Chen's team had engaged. As she observed, one raider pulled out an advanced hacking device, only to find that the airlock was running on an isolated circuit, another basic security measure that dated back to Earth's earliest space stations. They're so focused on defeating high-tech defenses that they've forgotten about the basics, Morrison observed, shaking her head. No manual overrides, no physical breaching tools, just fancy energy weapons and quantum devices. Speaking of quantum devices, Chen said, turning to the captured raider leader secured in the corner. I believe you were about to explain why you wanted our navigational database. The leader's translator crackled as he spoke. You are not what we expected. Our intelligence said this colony was defended by Xendari forces. It is, Chen replied calmly. We're just the backup that no one thought they needed. She nodded to Santos, who was monitoring the remaining raider forces. Your troops are in disarray. Want to give the order to surrender before things get messier. As if to emphasize her point, the surveillance feeds showed another group of raiders discovering that their shield generators had been disabled by precisely placed shots from the SEAL's simple projectile weapons. The raiders' advanced armor, designed to repel energy weapons, offered little protection against old-fashioned kinetic impact. Commander, Cooper interrupted. Xendari forces are requesting permission to advance on the remaining raiders. Commander Zax Thor wants to coordinate with our positions. Chen allowed herself a small smile. Granted. Let's show them how Earth's special forces handle joint operations. She turned back to the raider leader. Last chance. Call off your forces or watch them learn the hard way why humanity's combat doctrine has survived for so long. The leader's shoulders slumped in defeat. Even through his alien features, Chen could read the resignation. He had expected to face advanced alien warriors with similarly advanced technology. Instead, his forces had been systematically dismantled by humans using combat techniques and technology that predated first contact. Send the surrender signal, he commanded, his translator making the words sound bitter. As Chen watched the tactical display, red dots representing hostile forces began changing to yellow as raiders stood down. The operation had been completed with minimal casualties on either side, exactly as her team had planned. Inform Commander Zax Thor that we're beginning prisoner processing, she ordered, and tell him I'll be happy to provide a full demonstration of our primitive tactical approaches during the debriefing. The colony's detention center hummed with activity as Chen supervised the processing of Star Reaver prisoners. Her team had established a temporary command post, coordinating with colonial security to handle the aftermath of the failed raid. The air still carried the faint scent of ozone from discharged energy weapons, mixing with the colony's recycled atmosphere. Final headcount confirmed, Morrison reported, looking up from her tablet. 37 prisoners secured, 15 wounded under medical care, and no fatalities on either side. She paused, allowing a small note of pride to enter her voice. Exactly as you planned, Commander. Chen nodded, reviewing the preliminary damage reports. Most of the colony's infrastructure remained intact, thanks to their preparation and precise execution. The few areas that had sustained damage were primarily from the Xendari's energy weapon exchanges with the raiders, not from her team's operations. The sound of heavy footsteps drew her attention. Commander Zax Thor approached, his crystalline armor bearing fresh scorch marks from the battle. The massive alien warrior moved with a deliberate grace that seemed at odds with his size, and Chen noticed his escorts had remained at a respectful distance. Lieutenant Commander Chen. Zax Thor's translator rendered his words with an unusual softness. I find myself in an unexpected position. Chen turned to face him fully, maintaining her professional composure. Commander Zax Thor. I trust the prisoner transfer is proceeding to your satisfaction. The alien commander's scales shifted in what she now recognized as amusement, but this time without the earlier condescension. The prisoners are secure, yes, but that is not what brings me here. He gestured to her team, who were still efficiently managing the aftermath of the operation. "I came to acknowledge that I was wrong." "Sir." Chen kept her tone neutral, though she couldn't quite suppress a small smile. "Your methods, which I dismissed as primitive, achieved in minutes what my warriors could not accomplish in an hour of direct combat." Zaxthor's massive shoulders straightened. "You neutralized the enemy command structure, disabled their ships, and forced a surrender with minimal casualties, all without relying on neural enhancement or energy weapons." Morrison and Santos exchanged glances, but maintained their professional focus on their tasks. Cooper, monitoring the security feeds, allowed himself a small grin. "We each have our strengths, Commander," Chen offered diplomatically. "Your warriors fought bravely and provided the perfect distraction for our operation." Zaxthor's scales rippled with what might have been appreciation for her tact. "You are generous, Lieutenant Commander, but we both know your team could have handled the situation without our theatrical assistance." He reached for something attached to his armor, "which is why I have come to offer this." The object he held out was immediately recognizable, a Xandari warrior's ceremonial blade. Its crystalline surface caught the light in ways that seemed to defy physics, creating patterns that shifted with every movement. Chen had seen such weapons before, but only in diplomatic presentations. They were never offered to non-Xandari. "This blade has been in my lineage for 10 generations, Zaxthor explained. "It is traditionally given to those who teach us important lessons about warfare, about honor." His translator somehow managed to convey the weight of his words, about not judging capability by appearance alone. Chen accepted the blade with appropriate reverence, noting how it seemed to hum faintly in her hands. "We would be honored to conduct joint training exercises with your forces, Commander. There are always new techniques to learn, new perspectives to consider." "Indeed," Zaxthor agreed, his massive head inclining slightly. "Though this time, I believe it is my warriors who will be doing most of the learning." He gestured to the detained raiders. "After all, it seems there is much value in these primitive methods of yours." The blade in Chen's hands caught the light again, throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. It was more than just a weapon. It was an acknowledgement that humanity's place among the stars would be earned not by copying others' advanced technology, but by proving the enduring value of their own tried and tested methods. 3 months after the New Montana incident, Chen found herself floating in zero gravity aboard the Europa Scientific Station. The massive research facility hung in space like a delicate snowflake, its white surfaces reflecting Jupiter's distant light. Beside her, Commander Zaxthor's crystalline armor had been modified with subtle additions, including several pieces of primitive human tactical gear. Thermal readings confirmed 20 hostiles, Santos reported through their encrypted channel. "They've taken control of the main laboratory section. Looks like they're after the quantum computation core." Chen glanced at Zaxthor, who nodded in agreement. After weeks of joint training, they had developed an understanding that transcended their different approaches to combat. The Xandari commander activated his neural interface, sharing tactical data with his warriors, while Chen's team relied on their traditional communications gear. "Your warriors are in position?" Chen asked, checking her modified rebreather system. The station's atmosphere had been vented in several sections, turning the environment into something familiar to any SEAL who had trained for space operations. "Ready to provide the, what did you call it?" "The shock and awe distraction," Zaxthor replied, his translator conveying a hint of anticipation. "Though I must admit, I never thought I would be deliberately drawing attention to my forces." Chen smiled behind her tactical mask. "Sometimes the most effective deception is giving the enemy exactly what they expect to see." She switched to the team channel. "All units, execute Operation Shadowfall." The joint operation began like a carefully choreographed dance. Zaxthor's warriors launched a spectacular assault on the station's main entrance, their energy weapons and neural-enhanced abilities creating a light show that would have made any Hollywood director envious. The hostiles responded exactly as predicted, rushing to defend against what they assumed was the primary threat. Meanwhile, Chen's team moved through the station's maintenance tubes and external access points. Their movements were precisely timed to the station's rotation, using the periodic electromagnetic interference from Jupiter to mask their approach. It was a technique that dated back to the earliest days of space warfare, when human engineers first had to figure out how to approach Soviet satellites without being detected. They're still focused on the Xendari, Morrison confirmed from her position near the backup life support systems. Not one of them has thought to check the coolant recycling tubes. Chen watched through her tactical display as the joint operation unfolded. The Xendari warriors had learned to moderate their energy outputs, using just enough power to maintain the hostiles' attention without causing structural damage to the station. At the same time, her SEALs had taught them the value of timing their attacks to coincide with natural cover, like the electromagnetic pulses from Jupiter's intense magnetic field. Primary target located, Cooper reported. They'd got some kind of quantum encryption device, similar to what we saw at New Montana. Probably the same organization. Chen mused, watching as Santos prepared their countermeasures. But this time, we've got a few surprises for them. The hostile force never saw the joint strike coming. While the Xendari warriors kept their attention fixed on the main corridor, Chen's team emerged from hidden access points throughout the laboratory section. The hostiles' advanced sensors, calibrated to detect energy weapons and neural signatures, completely missed the simple motion sensors that the SEALs had deployed. At the same time, Zaxthor's warriors executed their own variation of stealth tactics. They had learned to power down their armor just enough to slip past energy detection grids, using the skills they had acquired during joint training sessions. "This is elegant," Zaxthor commented as they watched another group of hostiles surrender after finding themselves caught between SEAL precision strikes and Xendari power, the perfect balance of our different approaches. Chen nodded, observing how her team smoothly coordinated with the Xendari warriors. Where once there had been skepticism and dismissal, now there was respect and cooperation. Human ingenuity combined with Xendari technology had created something entirely new, a hybrid combat doctrine that took the best from both worlds. The graduation ceremony at the Joint Special Operations Academy on Titan was unlike anything in human or Xendari military history. Through the reinforced windows of the main auditorium, Saturn's rings provided a spectacular backdrop as Lieutenant Commander Chen stood at the podium, Commander Zaxthor at her side. 1 year ago, Chen addressed the assembled graduates. Many thought this academy was an impossible dream, that our different approaches to warfare were too divergent to reconcile. She gestured to the assembled trainees, both human and Xendari. You have proven them wrong. The graduating class represented the best of both species. Human SEALs sat alongside Xendari warriors, their different forms of armor reflecting the unique combination of technologies they now employed. Some Xendari wore modified rebreathers alongside their crystalline armor, while human operators carried neural interface devices adapted to work with their natural capabilities. Your class has achieved something remarkable. Zaxthor's translator conveyed his words with pride. You have learned not just to work together, but to understand why each approach has value, to see strength in our differences rather than weakness in our traditions. Chen watched as Santos demonstrated a new hybrid combat technique to a group of junior instructors. The petty officer moved with practiced grace in low gravity, showing how traditional SEAL underwater maneuvers could be adapted for space operations. Beside him, a Xendari warrior demonstrated how to modulate energy shields to minimize detection, a technique that would have been considered heresy among their forces just a year ago. Commander, Morrison called from her position near the environmental controls. You're going to want to see this. Chen turned to one of the training areas visible through the auditorium's internal windows. A young Xendari warrior was practicing the ancient human art of blade combat with Chief Morrison, their movements precise and controlled. The Xendari's natural strength was tempered by human techniques developed over centuries of close-quarters combat. Who would have thought? Zaxthor mused, watching the display, that our warriors would find such value in physical combat training. Yet now they understand. Technology can fail, but skill and training endure. In another section, Cooper was teaching a group of Xandari specialists how to use simple mechanical tools to bypass advanced security systems. Meanwhile, a Xandari neural expert helped human operators understand how to detect and counter quantum-based surveillance. The exchange of knowledge flowed both ways, creating warriors who were equally comfortable with both high technology and basic tactical principles. The next generation will be even better, Chen noted, watching a young human trainee successfully calibrate a Xandari energy weapon. They won't see these as human or Xandari techniques, just effective ones. The ceremony proceeded with both human and Xandari traditions. Each graduate received a ceremonial blade, now modified to include elements from both cultures. The crystalline weapons hummed with energy, but were balanced for physical combat, symbolizing the blend of approaches that had become their trademark. As the formal proceedings concluded, Shen found herself in the Academy's observation dome with Zax Thor. Saturn's rings stretched across the sky, a reminder of how far both their species had come. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you first watched those SEAL training videos?" she asked, allowing herself a small smile. Zax Thor's scales rippled with amusement. "I imagined many things, Lieutenant Commander, but I never imagined I would learn so much from those I once dismissed as primitive." He gestured to the graduates below. "These warriors will change everything. They have already begun to show others that true strength lies not in choosing between tradition and progress, but in understanding how each reinforces the other." Chen nodded, watching as human and Xandari graduates exchanged their own versions of military salutes. The academy had become more than just a training facility. It was a bridge between cultures, a place where different approaches to warfare had merged to create something greater than the sum of its parts. "The galaxy won't know what hit it," she said with quiet satisfaction. And in the end, that had been the greatest lesson of all, that humanity's place among the stars would be secured not by abandoning their methods, but by showing others why those methods had endured for so long.